My name is Zahra Khan, and I'm a fourth-year civil engineering major.
Okay. Hi, I'm Andrea Vargas. I'm a sixth-year industrial and systems engineering major.
We're doing our project on Rotterdam, and we're going to be going over the water management techniques and climate change planning strategies that are being employed in Rotterdam right now. The reason why we chose this project is because the effect of climate change on our society and our built environment is increasing. And it's becoming more and more noticeable. At the same time, our urban populations are rising too, so our cities are becoming denser. Rotterdam is a delta city, like many megacities around the world, and they're facing rising sea levels and other challenges as a result of global warming and climate change. Because of that, they've come up with innovative ways to combat that climate change, and they've tried to integrate different planning techniques to achieve that.
And the key concepts that we're going to focus on today are the history. We think it's important to understand the history of the Netherlands and how it started, the transition from how they handled water management in the past to how they handle it today, and then the categories in which they attack this water management now. So starting with the history, a very brief overview. It wasn't until 2000 BC that the ice caps in the north started to melt and affect this ratio. And so now the water level started to rise faster than the sea and started to flood all the dwellings of these inhabitants and killed several people every time it flooded. So it was very dangerous, and it forced them to innovate. So the first thing these inhabitants did was they started to build their dwellings on these higher level grounds that they would also form out of the peat and the sand, and they called these terps. And then they connected each of the terps by dikes to create their communities. And so that's how all of the raised land started. It started getting built and how the Netherlands started to form. So all of that kept moving forward until the Delta Works. So the Delta Works is a series of projects, and it was the biggest effort that they had towards reclaiming their land. And it was projects that would dam up the estuaries along the coastline and shorten the coastline so that they had less to defend against the North Sea. So it started in the north, and damming up the estuaries went perfectly fine. And then the south was more difficult, but they were eventually able to solve the problem there and shorten the coastline overall. This plan is now considered one of the 7 wonders of the modern world, so it was hugely impactful and still notable today. And so all of that helped a lot and kind of kept the Netherlands strong and functioning until 1953. And in 1953 there was a flood that killed 1,855 people.
The same gales that laid waste so much of Britain have taken an even greater toll of property and life in Holland. The seas, lashed by a mighty wind, broke through the dikes and poured in to swamp the countryside.
And this flood was very devastating to the Netherlands and to Rotterdam, and is what kind of started that transition into how they handle water management today. And so now, instead of this movement to keep building these high sea dikes and put the water out and filter it out of the Netherlands, now they're starting to work with the water and letting it in, and they realize that they can no longer evacuate in case of emergency, but they need to learn how to live with it when flooding does happen. And so there are 3 kind of overarching ways in which they're approaching it. The first way they're handling it is with these massive floodgates, which you can see an example of. And these floodgates there's several of these there. And then the second method is this project called Room for the River, and it's a series of, they're still building all of these normal entities that belong in the city, such as parks, basketball courts, garages, plazas. However, they're building them to double as reservoirs, and doing other projects like this to start working with the potential of flooding. And then the third method they're taking is educating their people. And so, for example, now children have to receive diplomas in swimming, not only regular swimming, but swimming with their clothes and their shoes on before they can swim in a public place. And then 2, they have GPS apps that tell you at any point in Rotterdam how far below sea level that you are, so that people are educated at what they're dealing with. And so with that, Zahra will go into some of the challenges and solutions that they're facing and some examples of those.
So climate change is bringing new challenges to our cities, and we're going to be going over 3 of these and how Rotterdam tackles each one. So the first one is rising sea levels, and for a place like Rotterdam that's densely populated and very low-lying, that can be catastrophic, and it can also be very costly. So Rotterdam right now has a system of canals, dikes, and waterways in place to prevent flooding. However, they also realize that the system is inflexible and it won't be able to adapt to growing developments and population in the city. So how did they encourage new innovative technology to be tested to achieve their vision for becoming a floating city, for letting water in? They took one of their oldest harbor basins called Rheinhaven, and they turned it into a space for tech companies to come in and experiment water planning and water management technologies. So one of the initiatives that is existing in this space, known as the RDM campus, is aqueducts. And as part of the initiative, water lots are given out to tech companies or whoever is interested to test out floating construction technology. It will basically allow Rotterdam to adapt to rising sea levels in new and innovative ways. And Rotterdam's famous floating pavilions are actually also located in this space. So the second challenge that Rotterdam realized they faced because of climate change was extreme weather events. And that meant more intense and frequent rainfall and droughts in the city. So one of the problems created by more intense and frequent rainfall is that it put too much pressure on Rotterdam's sewerage system and led to flash flooding. And then on the other hand, droughts created another problem where the level of the river would be so low during times of drought that seawater would flow into the delta and be deadly to the natural ecosystem of the city. So the city of Rotterdam realized that they wanted to tackle this in three ways. They needed to decrease runoff in the city when it rained. They needed to improve their water storage facilities, and they had to somehow increase groundwater seepage. And they did this by creating and planning their infrastructure to double as water storage facilities. So you can see that in the examples of Bentham or Museum Park, where they integrated water storage into public facilities so that they become part of the city. They increased their water storage capacity by using the natural capacity of soil to act as water storage. So they planted green roofs and gardens throughout the city. And for the third part, they removed over 2 kilometers of pavement along sidewalks, no more than 30 centimeters wide, throughout the city, where they planted gardens to improve groundwater seepage and to stop runoff. So the third problem that Rotterdam is facing as a result of climate change is rising temperatures. And the asphalt and concrete in our cities certainly doesn't help with that. So the way that Rotterdam is tackling that issue is they're planting green spaces around their city. Now, not all cities have spaces or the real estate for huge central parks like in New York. So Rotterdam is taking advantage of more innovative green spaces such as green roofs or pocket gardens or as I mentioned earlier, taking pavement out of sidewalks and planting narrow gardens throughout the entire city. So those are some of the innovative ways that Rotterdam is incorporating green spaces into their city. Basically, these measures are allowing Rotterdam to reduce their surface temperature, improve people's health, their performance, and their quality of life, while still retaining the original infrastructure.